I'm lighting it up today. I'm going to talk to Elizabeth Stevens. Um, Elizabeth is amazing. She used to be a US Army veteran. She's neurodivergent. She has a fashion sense that's out of this world and a personality that's about 400 million times bigger than she is. And when we met in Nashville, we immediately became besties. You're going to love Elizabeth. It's really, really hard not to. And I know you're going to enjoy this conversation. Well, with you, I think what fascinated me being Irish and having a very, very small army over here, that honestly, I think I could count on one hand the number of people that I know that are in the Irish Army, and even those I met them as adults. So when I sat beside you, and I learned that you were in the US Navy, like, not gonna lie, I know nothing. My ignorance showed immediately because I'm like, aren't they all like big, huge people, and you're not? You're teeny tiny. Well, to me, you seem teeny tiny.
I am teeny
Big
tiny.
personality.
Like, I'm big.
Yeah, yeah.
I am a big personality, but no, I'm very little. I'm a small. I'm all what a buck 25, a buck 30, all of 5'4". That's 5'3" and a quarter of an inch.
But you broke a lot of stereotypes for me, you know, and you're a mother, and of course you're Black. You know, the stereotype I see are the ones that are on the TV, you know, and that's my ignorance, hands up, coming from where I'm at. But that began with the intrigue for me. And I think every word that came out of your mouth in any conversation we've had since then has intrigued me ever since. And actually the very first time, and I think it's important to let people imagine this picture, the very first time I actually saw you was not, we had gone to dinner, of course, for the Hackers and Heels, but that wasn't the first time. The first time was at the WESIS event in Nashville, and we were doing the interactive session with Sans, where everybody was living the as if they were part of a company that had been exploited real time. And you took the microphone and ran with it and helped everybody kind of get the shit together, really, and start getting organized. And I howled, and that's like good howling, laughing from start to finish. The amount of energy and personality in that room was absolutely unreal. And I do recall turning around to complete strangers and going, that's my person. She's my kind of person. I like her. Yeah. So with that in mind, that lovely first impression that you gave, tell me what brought you to the Navy. Let's start there. Or maybe there's more before that. Where does it all start with you?
Well, so I was born, no, that's a Steve Martin quote. It's probably not appropriate anymore. I got to watch which quotes I use, right? From early days.
Most people won't even know who he is anymore.
No, right? I'm like, can I say I was born a young Black man, but like no one would get that reference, right? So,
you'll have to go Google it now. At least
so I was born in Memphis, Tennessee. My mom and my dad met in college. Traditionally, my skill set in cybersecurity is data and stalking. So I say stalking people, but social engineering, systems engineering, all of these things. And it's funny because that even now as an adult, and we're talking about not being neurotypical, it all is like aligning with the check boxes, right?
Yeah.
So they met in college. He stalked her, technically in a bad way. Probably should have been like nowadays it wouldn't be acceptable, right? But like he fell for it. They were married, still were married until March, this past March when she died. So like full life together. They were both engineers, and my mother was a mechanical engineer and a civil engineer. My father was an architectural engineer. And so my mom became an environmental engineer as well. And then my dad maintained his architectural engineering and construction. So my mom, for those of you who know, like your parents are in the United States, we say blue collar, like salt of the earth. So my mom is the person that 50 years ago would have been the school teacher for the entire neighborhood. She's the one that organized the business, organized the kids, organized the events, completely passive aggressive. The one that was quiet all the time, but she was the one that was in the background moving the strings, right? Yeah. She would say to me, and now it's not appropriate, but she would say to me, baby, Caesar's wife has to be above reproach. So I know that they are getting away with that, but you can't do that. That kind of mom,
Yeah.
Southern Black woman, right?
Yeah. I love it.
All of that. Meanwhile, my dad is an immigrant. He's from Ghana. So like technically I'm like half first generation Ghanaian in Tennessee. And he's an architect, but he's all, and I cannot like talk about role like issues, gender role issues. He is the person that like I still have like pictures of these paintings that he's done of like these satellites that were biomes. Like this is back in the 70s and the 60s, right? Like my dad's a creative, not organized at all.
No.
Really charismatic, great people person, not organized at all. So then you come along, and my mom is from the States, my dad is from Ghana. You can imagine all of that weight, right? And then my mom being a Black woman in the South, and there's weight there as well, right? And then the cultural significance of my parents, like Black Americans not getting along with Black Africans and vice versa. So that was all of this big thing when I was growing up. And so I came from a household of two people that were really good at math, really good at interacting with other people, and really good at together as a team functioning to get things done. Not great communicators,
but doers.
And so I was the firstborn, but like, I had my brother, I had my sister come along, I had my cousins. We spent a lot of time like with my mother's mother, my grandmother, all of my cousins together growing up. It's kind of a communal thing. But the thing that I learned was that, in order to do the things that I wanted to do and be the way that I am now, I can say naturally, I had to make certain adjustments. And so when I was little and being in the space that I was in, my grandmother would say, you have to take care of yourself. And I'm going to say it like I got to be completely transparent. So my grandmother would say, if you want a husband, you got to take care of yourself. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? And why do I want a husband? And she said, well, because most people think if you're pretty or you're out there and you're fast, then a man will want you. But no good man wants a woman that can't do for herself. So baby, you got to do for yourself so you can get a man. And, little me is going, I feel like I need to do for myself. I still don't get what the man part means, right? Like I'm like 6. Like, so I gotta do for myself. And the goal is if I can be the best me there is, then I'm gonna be able to find a man.
That's the secret sauce.
That's the secret sauce, right? So this is cultural, right? Like I love, because I'm the product of this. So I can say I love the culture that raised me. I understand why it's crazy, but the thing that probably saved me is my non-neurotypicalness, right? From being a different person. What I got out of that was, okay, I don't get what having a man means. That means I'm gonna have to be the best I can be, which means I got to do all of these things. I'm gonna learn all of these things. I'm gonna enjoy all of these things. And so by the time I got to college, or to high school, actually, I was so like driven to like do the thing, right? You're starting to figure out, like, as I'm talking, you're figuring out what my non-neurotypicalness is. So driven to do the thing that I was knocking it out of the park. I was killing it. I still had no idea why people didn't respond the way that they were supposed to respond. I had no idea why people didn't like act a certain way. So much so that by the time when I got to the Naval Academy, and we were finally allowed out to go out on the town, my classmates were like, they were drinking, and I was like, ooh, that's too much. You're going to get sick. Why would you? No, you, man, one or two. You don't mix those, right? Didn't understand, right? Like, this is how.
Not in the room.
I was brilliant. I had like the teachers love me, like doing all this stuff, had a job, playing the sports, doing all the things. But like literally, I grew up believing that I was just naive, right? Like that I was gullible. The truth was I wasn't neurotypical. So the way that my brain worked, because of my family, right, didn't align to the things that I was seeing or the culture that I was raised in. But because of my parents being so brilliant in their individual, unique ways, they were brilliant in the people way. in the people strategy way. So they had no idea how to teach me that. None. Right? Like, they're like, well, but like, it's just, you talk to them and they will like you. And I'm like, and then I would see my dad go out there. And people would chase him. And I'm like, so, okay. And so I'd go do it and they'd be like, and I'm like, that didn't work, Dad. It's not in the book of etiquette. It's not in anything. And so what I did was I can't, like, the world is crazy. It's too loud. There's too many people that aren't logical. It doesn't make any sense. Where can I go that it's going to be logical and make sense?
Now the pieces.
Military.
Yeah.
Right? We've got structure. We've got rules. We've got organization. They will let me do whatever I'm really good at that fits the strategy and the mission.
Yeah.
I can be sure that I know what I'm working for. And there's transparency, right? We can talk about that later. I can be sure that I know what I'm working for, what I'm working towards, and what it means. And I can be happy doing the things that, maybe I am a very short, very small, I hate even saying petite Black woman, but I am.
Only physically, though, definitely not.
Never judge a book by its cover. Black holes come in small packages. Sometimes, I'm trying to figure it out at this point. I'm like, hey, I'm halfway through my life. I'm good at this. But I look at that and I go, that was a safe place for me.
Yeah.
And so I say it out loud. I, Elizabeth Stevens, grew up a Black woman in the South with 2 educated parents. I had a family of both, the family that came from a male-dominated society, a family that came from a female-oriented and dominated society that worked together. And I had models of like what an adult who cared about their family and took care of their family did. What I didn't have was a person that looked like me, thought like me, didn't understand like me, doing anything successful or in anything that I felt like I could do. Now, looking back, it's like, what? Let's just talk about the first career. So I left the Marine Corps in 2015. Still, first Black female to fly the CH-46, the assault support helicopter, first Black female to fly the Osprey, first Black female to fly in combat. Black female, like, I'm not even talking about the awards, like the amazing things that I got to do, right? Like my medals and what I did that was awesome. I'm going, these things just started ticking, right? Like, and it occurred to me, not in a good way. Like the first time someone would say, hey, you do know you're the first. And I'm like, the first what? And they're like, oh, you're the first Black female to do this thing. First Black female to graduate from the Naval Academy with a Marine Corps aviation contract. I'm like, how long has the Marines been flying? A long time. That plane that I want to fly is 60 years older than me. Like, so if I didn't say yes,
you were like 150 years old or something, like,
right?
Which you're looking really well for, but I can't believe that. That was so recent.
I'm around. Look, that's what I'm saying. Like, we're not talking to, it's not AI. It's not 2 decades ago.
No.
Right? There were 3 Black women in the Marine Corps aviation when I was in, no more than 3 the entire time, which is hilarious. But there were only 3 of us, myself, a lady named Miska, and a lady named Bernice. The 3 of us. Bernice could be my twin. Like, she's from the same city that I was born in. Like, we don't know how we're not related, right? She went to the police force when I went to the Naval Academy, and somehow we met in Iraq flying helicopters. But those 3, right? These 3, it's 2024 now. How many do you think there are?
Is it too much to hope that there's a 50-50 ratio? Like, I would maybe a 30-40% ratio, no?
There's one Black, one active duty.
Oh, I thought you were telling me to shush. There's one?
There's one. No, see, this is the whole point.
Oh my gosh.
I got in, they're like, oh, you're the first Black female to do the thing. And I'm like, oh, so if I had chosen nuclear subs, I'd have been, wait, what? I'm the first for the Marine Corps? Wow. Okay. Next, right? And then next, and then the Osprey thing, first woman to fly the Osprey, not even first Black female. This is how bad it is. First woman to fly the Osprey. I came back from a training flight. It's nighttime. I'm all agitated. because someone's taking pictures on the flight line, which is a bad thing. Because, I'm like, my night vision. Like, I'm young. This is why I thought I was naive, because I'm going, I should see these things coming, but I never see them coming. But I do, right? And so they're taking pictures. I get out of the plane. I'm like, wow, I'm cussing because it's Marine Corps. To my co-pilot, I'm like, wow, blah, blah, blah. They shouldn't have that out there. There's no lights on the flight line, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, well, they're here for you. I'm like, why are they here for me? What did I do? And he's like, you don't know you're the first woman to fly the Osprey. And I'm like, are you the first Hispanic man to fly the Osprey? And he's like, well, actually, yeah. I'm like, haha.
It's funny. It's not funny at all, really. I laugh. Yeah, it's just crazy to fathom. Yeah.
Then add that, because we're here to talk about, I have 3 kiddos. I have one who was born with Down syndrome. She's my oldest. Yeah. I have one who's autistic. She's my middle. And then I have one who's my little clone. I didn't find out so there was a flood in Houston. So that had been about 2017. I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism. The psychiatrist, she says to me, we've never seen scores like this before.
So right? You're even the best at that?
Yeah, look, I'm like, the test is faulty. Right? One of them measures your eye movement across some stuff that you do. And I'm like, but I flew helicopters at night on goggles. Yeah. I'm supposed to move my eyes all the time. I never stop, which would look like ADHD, right? Skill set. Still though, no idea what that even meant to me. Right? No idea. 6 years after that, my middle kiddo, because my oldest has Downs, I'm doing all the OTPT stuff. I'm like, I get this genetics. I know all about this. There was a show when I was young. It was called, I can't remember, but the kid's name was Corky.
Corky, I remember him too. Yeah.
Like one day at a time. No, it was something, but it was a great show. I watched it, loved it. Right. And so like, I know Down syndrome. I studied, I did it. I got everything going, in genetics. That's a thing for me. So I got that. And then 6 years later, my daughter is like, she did a thing. Like, they're all brilliant. She did a thing. And I was like, I wonder why that is. Yeah. So we get her evaluated. And the doctor's like, a specialist nonetheless, that I drove 8 hours to get her evaluated. The doctor's like, I think she just has ADHD. And I'm like, why would you say that? And she's like, well, look at her. I'm like, we drove 8 hours to be here. It's a new place, different space. You didn't explain to her what the tests were about. I would be uncomfortable with this.
It's a fairly normal reaction, yeah.
Right? And so as I said those things out loud, I'm like, because we probably have the same diagnosis. And if she doesn't actually have the diagnosis, I'm modeling the behavior for her anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so watching and Bailey is just this gorgeous spitball fire. People like to say these words that I actually absolutely make me cringe. They're like, but she doesn't look like she has autism. And she can grow out of it. And I'm like,
grow out of it? Yeah.
She can grow out of it. No, she can't grow out of it. And then to see, because for my family, right, like outing myself is a thing, but like for my family, when they say stuff like that, and I'm like, well, I didn't grow out of it. And they're like, but you seem normal. I'm like, that's
how it works. That's what we do all day, every day. Like, yeah.
Takes a lot.
For you, not for us.
Not for us. For you, it takes a lot of energy.
Yes.
So for me, the military, right? It sounds strange. The military was a safe place for my neurotype. Absolutely.
It makes sense though, with that structure and the routine and the rules and the boundaries. And if they're giving you an instruction, it's a clear and concise instruction that you can follow to the letter, and there's no gray area about what it might actually mean. Like, absolutely, that makes perfect sense. I thought about joining the army when I was from about 16 to about 18, and I just didn't, because our army was very different to yours, if you know what I mean. And I ended up going down a whole completely different track. But in hindsight, I forget even that I thought about doing that till I hear other people who either did join it or thinking about joining. Even one of my boys was saying it too before his diagnosis. And to me, I was screaming out for that that regularity, that so when I woke up in the morning, I knew what was expected of me. I knew if I delivered, and I could go sleep at night knowing it was either done, or I knew what the list was that I had to do the next day. Like, it was that simple, and I didn't have to face somebody who was going to have an expectation of me that they didn't actually ask for, but I was supposed to somehow know. Huh?
No, but then think about this for you, like for me, I'd imagine. So there must have been times when you were doing everything possible just to hold on, because it takes a lot of energy, right?
Yeah.
You were doing everything possible just to hold on in that moment. And someone came to you, right, and said, well, it should be this, right? And then, like, for me, I imagine I'm gonna ask you why. Like, I would be like, well, here's what
Yeah.
you told me to do.
How was
Right?
I supposed to know that that's what you meant? Like,
It's not in there.
yeah.
It's not. Did you ever? Because I'll say, like, it made it hard to stay in jobs.
Yes, I have
Okay.
many a time gone back through emails and recordings of conversations go, you definitely did not ask me to do that. Like, how was I supposed to know? And they'll show me and they'll go, there, it was implied. I'm like, oh, but that wasn't said.
There's no
That's very
implying.
different.
What is
I
implication to you?
Exactly. And I used to take this, my most recent boss, every time I'd have a conversation, a one-on-one with him, I used to get off the one-on-one and go straight to my colleague and say, okay, here's what he said. And she
Yeah.
would translate what that meant, what he
Yeah.
actually, because I could not get what was intended between the lines. I'm like, I don't understand. He asked me to do this. And she's like, oh no, that's because he meant this. And that's because he wanted whatever. I'm like, why can't he just ask me for that?
No, but see, yes, that's who we are. Now, the reason that this is, so I love it. I know I'm not supposed to talk about this stuff, but like,
No, crack
this
on.
is why AI is so good for us, right?
Structure.
So I'm like in cyber, because I described why the military, right? So from the military, I'm like, okay, I'm out of the military. I'm going to sit at home and underwater basket weave. This is a joke from the Naval Academy, because like, what else do you do when you retire from the military? You're apparently old and busted. So like, go to sleep, right? Put you out to pasture. Oh no. Oh no. So we finish up our military career and we're like, okay, I'm going to sit around. I can give that a try for like 5 minutes, right? Like, because I'm not trying to be too busy.
Yeah.
And I got a call from a friend, and he's like, "Hey, I need your special type of people, right? I need your special type of people work." And I'm like, What does that mean?" And he's like, "I need you to like build this team I have in the phrase." He goes, "I have a group of tree hugging hippies that are my infrastructure team, and they're out surfing in the morning, but they're brilliant, and so I need somebody that can come and make them a team." And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds interesting. What is infrastructure?"
Wrangle them all somehow, like, yeah.
Yeah, like show them that they should value each other, right? Which is number one mom job. Show them that they should value each other, right? So I go in and I meet these guys. They're amazing, right? Like, they're an amazing team. I love them all, even today. First day I knew I didn't want to be on the team anymore.
I could imagine that.
First day I was like, this is not for the long haul. They don't make no sense. There is no order here. There's no structure. They don't even know what they're doing. Like, and you want me to be a project manager and a security person at the same time?
Yeah.
I don't think you guys
Sounds
know
like
what that
the
means.
only one that would have had rules and boundaries then in that case.
That's quite literally what it was.
How did you do it then? How did you wrangle them?
So I think it's a misnomer for people. Like, they say that we come in and wrangle people, but I think people with our neurotype, we don't wrangle. What we do is establish for them a sense of safety around like the expectations. It's the same thing I did for them, what I wish people had done for me, right?
Yeah.
I was like, hey, you're trying to do this. I mean, at the end of the day, the best part is like, at the end of the day, before I left that job, I would get a call at 6 a.m. We lived in San Diego. 6 a.m. I get a call and he go, hey, surf's up. Todd looks really good. I'm going to be late. And I'm like, cool. Sounds good. When are you coming in? He's like, we don't have anything to do until after this time. And I've already pre-positioned the stuff that you need for the morning. I'm like,
cool.
All right, surfer dude. What does it mean when the tide, why is this tide?
Google's surf
Yeah. What is, like, I'm like, what does that mean? Because I live close to the beach too, right? Like, should I be learning something, right? And so, like, this is tree hugging hippies that are going, hey, Liz, next thing is this, blah, 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 right? Like, and for me, it was just, hey, I listened. Like what I did was be you, be me. This is what you said. This is what you did. You'd be so surprised how much you wouldn't, but most people are. How much simply listening to people helps them. Listen to them and then take it to the next step and show them how what they're communicating isn't what they mean to communicate. That's graduate level. Not everybody's ready for that. But I think in a transition way, being able to say, this is what I need for me, allows me to go, well, maybe that's not what other people need. Yeah. And so deathly, I grew up absolutely isolated, absolutely like thinking that I was the outside weirdo, right? Absolutely just like, is anybody else like me? There's so many layers there, you know what I mean? Like,
how long was it then before you did meet somebody else that was like you? Or I was going to say, have you ever? I mean, I presume, I'm assuming you have by now, but I mean, literally like for like. Obviously, I look different to you.
No,
but like meeting somebody that looks like you as well.
So, I actually, so I know. Great thing about being in tech. I met a young lady. I won't say her name because I'm sensitive about outing people who haven't discussed their non-neurotypicalness. I met a lady at Microsoft who is probably, she used to joke she could be my daughter. She could, like I was a late mom or whatever. But like I met her, we hit it off instantly. Like I couldn't put my finger on it initially.
It's mad, isn't it?
I think I'm like, okay. Okay, you, and she'll know if she watches the podcast. Like you, I dig you. We can hang. Let's do this, right? And first she did the whole, okay, you're an old lady. What do you think thing, right? And then I did the whole, well, whippersnapper. And over like a 3-week period in conversations, she's like, oh, I'm well on the spectrum. This, and this, and I'm medicated and I do this therapy and I do this. And I'm like, well, when did you find out you were on the spectrum? She's like, I've known my whole life. I'm like, well, how did that work? She's like, my mom was horrible. She didn't really understand it and this, and this. But she was like, but what that allowed for me to do was figure out how to interact with people. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds like my experience. Right. And I'm like, so tell me about this. Like, so immediately this woman that was coming to me like, I'm her mentor. Like I'm teaching her all these things. And I'm like, oh, can you educate me on? And she's like telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, I need to use this for Bailey. I need to use this for Dina. I need to use this for me. Right. And so I'm like, this is what she's experiencing. This is what that's like. Right. And so that was the first time, that was COVID, first year of COVID. So 2019.
It's maybe. Not even that long ago then.
No, remember I was in the military and I'm a pilot. And if you have ADHD or autism, you are not medically qualified to be.
Yeah. Really? That stinks.
Now you can't fly.
Because if you're taking the medication.
If you take medications, 2, if you have the diagnosis.
So you can't win either way, like?
Oh yeah, no, like it's a big deal right now. Like for me, I'm like, well, I'll just buy my own plane. That's what I'll do. Do what I want. If I want to do it, I'm gonna do it.
I'll build it if I need to.
You know.
And but I've heard in some countries they won't let you drive.
No, it's true.
And with life assurance as well, in some countries they won't insure you.
Try to get a visa.
Yeah. Oh, really? That's a problem too.
To get a visa. Well, I mean, I feel like it's changing now. So for those of you out there, I'm old, right? Like, but I'm still young as grass, so y'all can't tell. Just like Jennifer, right? I'm older than I look by a lot. Okay. I'm older than I look by a lot. I've had a long life. I've been global. I've worked for Microsoft. I've worked for Simple Use Gas and Power. I've worked military. I get around. But the truth is that those of us that live with this kind of diagnosis, it's only recently that people have been open about it, able to assess it, or even qualify it. Like I had the best military doctors in the $100 million airplanes, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment. Under like billion, I had a $3 billion budget at one point, right? Why? Because guess what? When you're autistic and you look for details and structure and organization, who's really good at finding those patterns? Who's
I
really good at
wonder.
looking at stuff and seeing things that are out of place just because? Which also sounds like cybersecurity.
And I would beg to argue as well that there's advantages beyond even just what you're saying there with the structure. Like I would find that my ability with like pattern recognition, I am not a math person, but pattern recognition I'm pretty good. So even though I don't actually code, I can read it and spot problems with it and stuff because it just looks
Oh, you need to stop saying that you don't actually code, because I went to the Naval Academy, right? I was in the calculus class. First 2 years, I took all of the math. I was in calculus class with the football players, so I was in the math for rocks, right? Because why? If you're trying to teach normative people how to do
yeah.
calculus, you use certain techniques. So they were saying words, but I'm going, what does the triangle mean? Right? So, my instructor's like, I love him. He's great. He's like, Elizabeth, he's like, there's no reason you're in this class. You're tutoring everybody else. And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, but you can't pass the test. And I'm like, because what does the triangle mean? He's like, this means literally like Rosetta Stone. He's like, when you see this, it's telling you to do that. I'm like, well, why don't they just, and then, good, done math, but, dyslexic still, but good, done math. Right?
Yeah.
That's not on you, right?
Mm.
Like you code, like principal, I can say this because I'm a principal software engineer at Microsoft.
Okay.
Still don't believe it. I was like, are y'all sure?
I for real am waiting for you to say that you're also the queen of a small country somewhere because I wouldn't be surprised by any of it.
Look, at this point, what's going to happen next? I mean, all of it is to say is if everybody, like when I sit here and we talk, you said, when did I meet somebody that was like me? So horrible short-term memory, too many helicopter landings. I have friends, I have colleagues, I have like ride or die buddies.
Yeah.
The first time that I felt like I was with people that were truly like me, because there have been times where I'm like, oh, this is like my people, but I was still like different.
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah. I was sitting beside this lady from Ireland and this lady named Nikki Robinson. Before they had started talking to me, I was like, why am I here at this thing? It's just a social thing. Then, it's called Hackers in Heels. Why did I let my team force me to come to this? And then I think, so I started talking to you, I started talking to Nikki, and then I heard what everybody said, and I was like,
yeah.
Where have y'all been all my life? Like if any one of the two of you had been at any job, any role, any location that I was like, oh no, I'm out, I'd have stayed. Right?
Yeah.
Like if I could have sensed, because I don't even think you know what you said to me that night, but like I can even sense, like as we sat there and we talked, there was no like need for me to cover, right? Because I know what
there
it
was
feels
no
like
boundaries.
to cover.
Immediately.
Right.
And I recall thinking a similar thing, like, because I felt completely out of my depth. I'm like, I know we didn't have time after the sessions during the day to get changed properly. So I was like, I threw on a top over what I had, and everyone else was so like done up. You were done. Oh, piece of resistance that outfit you had that night. You always look amazing. But I remember thinking, what the fuck? How did I push myself to be involved in it? Because I like to be outside of my comfort zone. But I still was sitting there going, I'm such a big Irish culture, like, going, what am I doing? But same thing with you. I turned around and I spoke to you and immediately felt like a human being as opposed to worrying about anything else, like that we were just on a human to human. And I think, like I say, when I saw you speaking, even though it wasn't intentional, I saw you take the mic at the talk, I knew immediately. I was like, she's one of the people.
Look, I was like, there's one of us. Well, and so like I know we talk like, and we'll talk about like all the things that we could talk about, but I feel like the thing that people like us miss is that we're qualified by others as different.
Yeah.
But we're not different. Our systems thinking, like the way that we think about things, makes us feel like we're different because we're going, well, they did that. but that doesn't make sense and I wouldn't do that. So I must be different. But the truth is, their perspective is different than our perspective. And so when we're going, we must be wrong, it's not that. It's we communicate differently as well. There's nothing wrong with our brains. It's just how we process. Like some of us, I'll say I get in trouble all the time being a Black woman with autism and ADHD and living in the South of the US, because I could say it out loud, because the cultural pace here is slower than some other places, right? And so I have to pace myself because some of us actually listen to videos on twice the speed because our brains are going, it's too slow.
We're going to get so annoyed with it. Even the 30-second or 10-second videos on TikTok, I have to listen to it double time because it's too freaking slow.
It's too slow, right? Yeah. And now this is the best part, like, because now with AI, with LLMs out there, people are like, how do you know how to get it to do that? I'm like, oh, because it makes sense to me. It's doing what I would do. Like, I'm talking to myself. I'm like, hey, Gemini, I need to say these things, but I want them to like me. Can you make sure that I don't come off as arrogant, rushy, a badass, impactful, like this is what it's for, because people like us are going, it's not our brain, it's not our communication that's the problem. It's the reception. And the language models can go, 100% of these people will receive this message this way. 50% of these people would receive it this way.
Yes.
And then you can go, oh.
Which one do I prefer? I put a piece into ChatGPT today, and I was like, I need you to help me to I don't know, it was a letter I was writing, or probably something to do with like a job application. I need you to help me phrase it. And it wrote it all out and phrased it for me. And then it goes, do you like this? Or would you prefer that I wrote it more like you? And I was like laughing, going,
could you use my voice, please? Could you use my voice? But this is it. So like, this is our time. I want to say to everybody that's out there that's not neurotypical, this is our time. Because they don't like,
I've never felt more seen than in that moment from like, it's a machine knows that I'm making it.
Right? We're talking about like, I know that the video cameras in like Teams, poor Teams, the software was not meant for this skin tone, right?
Yeah.
But Chat and Gemini, they were meant
all equal. Yeah.
Yeah, they were. Yeah. I was like,
mm-hmm.
Oh, so-and-so was assertive aggressive. Was it assertive aggressive?
It's like a therapy as well. Like I use it as a therapy sometimes when I'm really mad with somebody, and I write down everything that I really want to say, and then I pump it into it, and I'm like, this is what I want to say. Tell me how to say it without getting fired.
You're calling it therapy. I believe it's actually the tool that we're supposed to use. Some people.
Makes sense. I hadn't thought of it like that till you said it, but I'm like, just today, like I've never seen it actually, I've asked it sometimes to adjust things more to how I would like to say it, and I've given him samples of things I've written myself. Yeah. That's the first time it's actually turned around and asked me, do you want me to write it more like you? I was like, oh my God.
Right? Like, there's dangers in it. Like, I have to say that out loud, right? Even though I just did like a whole workshop on how to use it and talk conversationally, right? There's dangers in it. But like, for people like us, we're not going to go, typically people are saying, it's cheating because people are having the bot, whatever tool, like plagiarize or do the work for them. But like people like our neurotype, we know what we want to say.
Yeah. Yes, like, we know exactly what we want to say.
I need this outcome. Can you help me get to it without being, because Gemini, because that's I use Gemini, because I broke up with ChatGPT for a reason, but we might, he's kind of come back around. I could be AI polyamorous. I'm not sure yet. I'm trying to figure it out. But Gemini and I, because I'm like, okay, Gemini.
I like that.
Gemini and I are on great terms. I go, hey, I need to be able to communicate this. And then I put it in there. And it goes, and I go, now I'm communicating to these people.
Yeah.
How do we say
the gap? Like, yeah.
And other people are going, I need to know how to code this.
Yeah. That's just regular Google will tell you how to do that.
Right.
But I think it's like, you're right. It bridges that gap between my kind of human and everybody else's kind of human as such. And like you say, even at dinner the other night, it's one of the few times that my kind of human is received by another my kind of human. And it's very, you're right. It's like I was energized coming out of that, as opposed to coming back to the hotel afterwards and going, oh, for about 4 hours, wondering how to like revive myself afterwards. Because yeah, even though sometimes like we talked a lot of deep stuff and we talked a lot of nonsense too, but it's all in equal measure, and it was all taken in the right way because it was as intended to somebody who can see it as it's intended.
So I love you because I love how you just apologize for not digging small talk. which is also our pattern.
It's a lot of work. Like, I'm sure you have these rehearsed lines. Like, my sister is a hairdresser, so 400 times a day she used to say, like, so you going on holidays?
Yeah. So like,
and I'm like, I have these rehearsed lines, you know. So isn't the weather great? You know, are the kids back in school? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't care. Like, just tell me. Let's go straight to your childhood. Let's tell me all about your trauma and the things you like about work and how much of an asshole your boss is, and you know that your peer gets paid more than you and does less work. I just want to get straight into that stuff because that I can kind of relate to, and I can, you know, I can either listen to it or we can talk about how the world is shit together and we can solve these things. Yeah. But I don't want to waste 20 minutes of my time talking about the weather and how pretty dresses are. They're worth their moment.
Well, that depends. That depends. Okay, so like there's a different topic there because when we're talking about people watching, our brains go a different direction. No, I think so. Like you should give yourself credit for this because like, what do? We go from coding to organizing to communicating, like in split seconds, right? Yeah. The science out there, the evidence wasn't evidence-based at all before, but the evidence out there now doesn't actually indicate that we're not able to parallel path thoughts all at the same time. Honestly, like the whole there's no split between the left and the right brain thing is still like, you know, a conversation for people.
Yeah.
And so when you say like how much energy it takes, think about how rare a person who doesn't really enjoy, because it takes energy, being around random new people who they don't know in a space where they're expected to communicate in a way like big book of etiquette, communicate in a way that's non-natural. And for the record, you're Irish, just like I'm my demographic. I guarantee you that your particular perspective and your voice is misheard and mistranslated all the time in new spaces and has nothing to do with what you said or how you're acting. So
true. You're very true.
Like the need to stay away has been reinforced in us.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's been reinforced in us. Like forget like race, forget even sex. Let's talk about our heights.
Yeah.
Right? Like I walk into a thing. Oh, even better, military story. I roll in with 2 aircraft to a mission, big deal mission, 60 minutes mission. Roll in, jump out my plane, full flight suit, helmet, ponytail at the time, right? Okay, who do we talk to? Army Lieutenant Colonel. I'm like a captain. Army Lieutenant Colonel comes over. He's like, we're looking for the captain in charge or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's me. And he's like, be my gunny sergeant. If the Marines aren't going to take this serious, guinea pigs. If the Marines aren't going to take this serious, then they shouldn't show up. And I was like, well, I'm the best we got. So you can either listen to me and accept our planes, or I'll take my planes and go home. I'm wearing a uniform.
Yeah.
Right. There is no question.
Yeah, that you belong there.
Cracker or Corba. The documentation says this is the mission commander for this unit, right? No question. But in his mind, and like we're on the same side, right? In his mind, he saw this little person with a ponytail pop out the helicopter.
Yeah.
And he was like, there's no way. This must be the B team. No, man. This is the A team. Like, you're lucky I'm here.
Yeah.
A-team, right? And so you don't see, like I tell you that story, you don't see how hard, how much work you've already been doing all of the time. Because like I tell you, I feel like, I don't know if you feel like this too, but I feel like all my kids share my diagnosis. right? Even my little clone who is like the caregiver and just so bubbly and cute. And I'm like, I don't remember being like that. But maybe I was, because, you talk to people and they're like, you were like this. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's good. Right.
I
So
think you forget though, if how old is the youngest?
8.
Yeah. And I think for me, I don't, until it all like went tits up when I was about 13 or 14. So the hormones kicked in and then everything got so much
Oh,
worse.
yeah.
It's like I've forgotten what I was like before then. And even seeing pictures and hearing people talk, like I would have been bubbly and outgoing. And then there was all those trauma years of trying to figure out what the hell to do, from about 13 or 14 up
Oh, I had,
until diagnosis, really. Like, so yeah, I think sadly, I think we forget that there was, I don't even think it's that it was normal then. I think we were allowed to be who we were up to a point. And then
yes.
you hit your teens and you're expected to behave more like an adult. And you're expected to abide more by rules and regs in schools and stuff, where you have a bit more freedom when you're smaller than that again. It's expected, and so people let it slide more and don't see it as different. They just see it as an age-based difference. And then as you get older, there's no room for that. Like,
I think you just hit that nail on the head. I think that's the whole concept of them expecting us to grow out of it.
yeah.
Right. And then at some point my problem was that I could speak well.
Mm.
Right. And I didn't know any better. So people would ask me questions and I would answer them. Right. Like, are you like, careful with Bailey, careful with my own child because of this. They're like, say, are you calling me stupid? No, but that's an assessment you can make.
Yeah.
Right. Are you trying to be smart with me?
I wish I had friends like you when I was little.
I'm not trying to be smart with you. Like, I'm very smart. Right. So when you look at it, like, and I struggle with this with my middle one, because she's exceptional as well. Right.
Yeah.
On both sides, they're all exceptional. But she'll say something because she's brilliant in a way that I'm not brilliant. She'll say something and I'll go, well, that's interesting. And she goes, well, do you know what I'm talking about? I go, I understand what you said. That's why I responded with that's interesting. And then there'll be this like autistic back and forth thing. And I'm like,
it's the well actually phrase in my house. I'm like, it lights me up like a fire. And do you know what? 9 times out of 10, they're probably right. I've misunderstood it. I wasn't listening properly anyway. But not the point. If you start your sentence with well actually, then I'm not hearing anything else you're saying afterwards. I'm like,
because it's verbal judo. Because they're coming at us. Right? Like well actually is like translates from like old school black mother saying, look, motherfucker.
Yeah. Exactly. Even if you start your sentence with like, did you know? I know it's the same thing, but I'm immediately going to go, did I know what? You're going to tell me something that I can share somewhere when I'm pretending to be a social genius?
Yeah, exactly. Because part of this is going, what bits can I take out of this interaction with you that will help me to be a better person? Like the kooky part is like, I watch us and I'm like, but which one of us is supposed to be the adult? Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I would say as a parent too, right, the blessing that I had, like the joy moment for me in the last month, because like I'm failing on every front, I'm gonna say, because now their teenage hormones are kicking in, was Bailey was like, Mom, I might have been a little bit, and I'm like, extreme, upset, out of pocket. I know you hate it when I try to finish your sentences. She said, out of pocket. It's okay this time. And I was like, oh, okay. You were out of pocket? And she's like, it's because I'm on my period.
Oh, good
my
girl.
Hormones. And I was like, so proud of her.
Yeah, good girl. Like, there's a lot to be.
Oh, okay. That's why you were mean to me.
Yeah. Identifying it, acknowledging it, stating it out loud. I always think it's like when I've got all worked up like that, it dissipates by at least 50% by just saying I'm all worked up. Like with my kids, my older kids, when they were younger, I was terrible at it. It was long before being diagnosed, and I was a shouter. I was a shouter all the time. Like, when I think back on it, my youngest is 10, and the older ones will always go, he doesn't know life. Like totally different. He's never. Once I shouted at him once because he frightened me at something, and I hollered at him to get his attention, and he burst into tears, and then I felt awful, and I realized that I'd never shouted at him before ever. But I'm just calmer and I understand it now. But that was my kind of go-to communication. So I think Now what
But
I
that's
find,
not, that's not about. So this is the thing that I wanted to say to you, and I say it to myself. A lot of people, like culture is supposed to, like your family, your upbringing, your community is supposed to teach you the coping mechanisms and the left and right lateral limits of how you interact with people to make them to do the things that you're supposed to do. You and I did not have models, right? So and this is a compliment to you, okay? My littles, because I'm not with my husband, my ex-husband, the kid's father. My kids for a while they were going, "Hey, you're mommy, daddy." They call me mommy, daddy, and I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. What is one? We're in the South. Two, why? What? Like, we don't do gender roles." And they're like, "Oh no, no. It's because a dad would do half the stuff and a mom would do half the stuff, and you're doing all the stuff. So you're our mommy, daddy. Like, you fix the car, you do our hair, blah 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 blah." And so for me, right, like I was a yeller. Like I'm still a yeller for sure. But like, and I'm sure you're still a yeller because you'll need to yell when you need to. But you've realized that the communication styles that we were taught aren't actually the communication styles because that's what people were doing to us. That's why you're doing it. People would yell at us and we'd be like, but
sure, we were yelled at to come in like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We were yelled at because the house I lived in was kind of long. So even if it wasn't yelled at with aggression, it was yelled at for everything to be called.
I say they were loud.
So we were like always hollering and among each other, like So it was the norm. And then I used to be so like wound up and frustrated all the time and the instant thing, like I had no patience for people not answering me immediately. And 3 of the 4 boys all have speech disfluencies. So I I didn't help that one, but I learned as well. I learned how, as a result of that. My dog sings. I learned how to slow it down and wait and ask the right questions and come at it a different angle because of their disfluency, not because I needed to change for me, but because I needed to change for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I would say, think about this too. Like, part of who we are is trying to survive, right? Like, you can say, like, I'm like, I laugh at it too, right? Like, I'm a decorated Marine Corps aviator retiree who is a global leader in cyber defense and cyber risk and AI. And I am absolutely incompetent around people, right? Like absolutely incompetent. I cover well, I study, I put a lot of energy into it. But I would say, like, even to this day, I would say I'm not a people person. But not a people person, this is how different it is, right? Not a people person does not mean I don't like people. It doesn't mean that people don't like being around me either. It also doesn't mean that our energy is negative. What it means is 9 times out of 10, because, the law of conservation, energy is always conserved. You can't destroy it. I'll go into a situation with this much energy, this much. And the people around me will come in with like this much. They'll leave with this much. I'll leave.
And you leave in pieces. Yeah.
And that's not fair to us.
No.
And so the way you were with your children, because I'll say I'm the same way. I learned from them, but I treat them because I didn't want to be, like, I didn't want them to have to deal with the things that I realized in my old age that I had to deal with because no one understood. I try to communicate to them in a way that is acceptable for them.
Yeah.
But those mistakes, like, it's not a mistake that I'm like, hey, do the thing. And they're like, whoa, what? I'm like, guys, if I yell at you from the corner, that means something bad's about to happen. I need you to gain visibility.
We used to have a warning system as well. Like I used to look them dead in the eye and I'd be going, do you want to do this right now? Can you see this face right now? And, I would consider that fair warning before I'd start actually hollering. But I'm so burnt out and I can't function right now. You want to push the button, like, stop.
Yeah, I use that tactic at work. I was like, look,
Oh, I never thought to use it at work. It could be
You have,
useful.
look, this is what the skill set is. It works everywhere because it's about people and communicating, not just family. Because I go, you want me to be me. Like, plus with all the stuff that happened in the last couple of years, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Roe v. Wade thing, the like, first everybody was like on board for us changing culturally and being inclusive and accessible. And then the backlash that comes, because that's what happens in the United States, is backlash against all of that progress.
Of course.
I've been, I was at the point where I'm like, look, if one more person asks me how I'm doing, I don't even know you, right? Like, why are you sending me an email? If one more person asks me how I'm doing, because I'm their Black FTE, I'm going to lose my mind. And so people would come in like, hey, I'm like, look, today, because it's a boundary now, because it's acceptable. Like, that's what we say. We can't say it's because there's something wrong with us. We can't say it's something wrong with them. Today, I have very little capacity for excess. And the last conversation was a lot. So I need time to process. And if we can do this later, I feel like you'll have a better outcome because I'll be in a better place to give you an outcome.
Yeah, and that's very respectful and considerate and such in both parts. So, because I often used to worry that in setting boundaries like that what would happen is that I'd offend the other person.
Yeah.
I think about it now, I'm like, I don't care anymore. If it's what I need, it's what I need. But I used to care about it way too much, to the extent that I could spend 2 whole days mute after giving up too much energy to other people. But Elizabeth, it's been...
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
I know. But
what time were we supposed to... Did we ask any questions?
I am inclined, though, to think at some point we might come back and do another one, because I could talk to you forever. And I'm sure we can come back and pick one of the many themes we were going to talk about today. And we've only done one of them, and it's been fantastic. And we can pick some more of them if you're up for it.
Yeah. No, I'm absolutely up for it. I just want to, like, if there's anything that we can share with each other or anything, like, because this is a perfect example. I am not feeling drained. I am not feeling like, I feel emboldened. I feel up. I feel energized by being able to have a conversation with you. And I think the thing that we do to each other that we don't know that we're doing is we're not visible. Not that we should be or have to be. It's not on us. But when we can be visible for each other, I say, let's do that. And for those that are out there that don't want to be visible, because it is dangerous, at some point you're going to have to figure out for yourself how to maneuver in and around the space in a way that actually brings you energy. The only reason, like you and I, that thing that I did, right? Because I hate being seen, because then they can come at you, right? They can get you. If they can see you, they can shoot you. We were at that event. It was supposed to be scenario-based executive learning.
Yes.
I believe it was the bait and switch. But without a certain level of like energy, no one in the room was going to participate.
No, they weren't. And you changed that energy completely. You must have been exhausted, though, when you went home after that, I'd say.
Yes, I got exhausted. I'm like, part of it, too, was me going, we are here, and if we waste this time, I'm not going to be happy.
Yeah.
And, the feedback, but even that, because that's off the topic, but even that, right, doing the thing that we do well, being the person that gets up for the good of everybody else and tries to help, there was negative feedback about that from a very specific persona, right?
Of course, yeah.
And like positive one person, and we all know why. That one person, because they felt like, but I know stuff. How come people are listening to her? And I'm like, this actually is my area of expertise, but also you can take the mic, right?
Yeah, feel free, knock yourself out. Yeah. There's always going to be those that'll judge from a corner where they're well protected and well buffered by everything. And I much like I suspect you're the same. Like, I give no shits anymore. No people like that. I ain't got no shits to give.
Yeah,
I used to give them an awful lot of energy, and I used to worry about it. I used to stay awake at night only to find that they didn't give me a second thought. So I've got, like you say, this amount of energy, and I now am finally in a place where I can choose what I'm going to spend it on. People talk about the spoons theory, and it makes sense. I'm going to choose where to use my spoons, and it sure as hell isn't on the haters. So
yes, because part of the reason you were yelling so much, because it's the same for me, is because the investment was in the wrong space.
Yes.
Right? Like, I'm like, man, I spend a lot of time with those people.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't spend the time with them, somehow things are better.
Oh, I found like I'm trying my best to close this off, but let me just say.
Oh, I know. Okay, yeah. Okay.
I found that the day or the moment that I decided that I was no longer going to give my time and energy to people who didn't deserve it, all of a sudden I don't even see the people who didn't deserve it anymore. It's like I immediately didn't just do it to the ones that were consciously stealing my energy at the time. But if I come across somebody that's that kind of a disposition, I will immediately, without any sort of self-consciousness or any guilt, just move away from that person.
Good for you.
Brilliant. Yeah.
No, good for you. Because at the end of the day, the thing that we've lost, or we didn't get, no one told us that we could advocate for ourselves.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Like, I'm spending all this time with people that are like, because I'm trying to help them understand. The truth is, they don't want to understand.
No. Yeah.
So imagine what we could do together.
Oh my God.
Imagine what happens when we do it.
The trouble we could get up to.
Oh my goodness, good trouble.
Yeah, bring it up. I'm going to start making a plan on how to take over the world now.
I know. Look, I think I started as soon as we got on the call.
Thanks a million, Elizabeth. I've really enjoyed this today, and we will definitely talk again.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye. So do you